Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started with the working with significant figures and calculations. I kind of talked about it in the previous video, but in science you have to be able to record your answer to the least precise measurement. So as we're doing our calculations, we're going to be figuring how to record our answer. We can't make results more precise than what actually went into it. So there's going to be two rules that you need to follow, and make sure that you star these. You're going to have to keep referring back up to these. So when we multiply and divide, there's a rule that we have to record our answer to the least number of significant figures. I'm going to show you that when we work through the examples. The second rule is when we add and subtract. This time we're going to look at recording our answers to the least number of decimal places. So you'll kind of see the difference between those two rules in a minute. So on our first calculation here, number 1, it says, okay, I want you to multiply 2.6 times 3.7. Hopefully at this point you know how to multiply numbers. If you don't, you have a calculator. 2.6 times 3.7 in your calculator gives you 9.62. So, but again, when I record my answers, I can't record them more precise than what went into it. So I'm going to look back at the rule that I had you star, and I'm multiplying this time, so it says record your answers to the least number of significant figures. So I'm going to go back and look at this number and think back to how we did significant figures. It's the Atlantic Pacific rule. So there's no zeros in this number. There is a decimal place present. So both of those are significant. So there's 2. If I look at the second number, there's a decimal place present. Start counting at the beginning of the number. So all 3 of those are significant. So the rule is when I'm multiplying, least number of significant figures. So the least number is 2. Well, right now my answer, 9.62, has 3 significant figures in it. So I'm going to have to round. So there's 1 significant figure. Now the next number is a 6. I need to decide at that point, am I going to round up or down? This 2 tells me whether I'm going to round it up or down. As long as it's a number below 5, you don't round up. If it is 5 or above, you do round up. So this is just going to stay 9.6. There are my 2 significant figures. Alright, the next problem is adding 3 numbers. So let's just go ahead in our calculators. 4.5 plus 2.83 plus 3.1 gives me 10.43. But again, write that answer down and then go back and think about it. Now, the rule for this one is different. For adding and subtracting, if you go back up and look at your rule, it says when you add and subtract, you have to record your answer to the least number of decimal places. So I'm not going to be counting significant figures. I'm going to be looking at the number of decimal places after that decimal. So in 4.5, there's 1 decimal place. In 2.83, there's 2 decimal places. In 3.1, there's 1 decimal place again. So here, my least number of decimal places is 1. So I need to round this number. I need the 10, and then my decimal, and I need 1 place after it. This 3 tells me that I'm not going to round up. So my answer is 10.4. Alright, third one, I'm dividing, so I'm going to go back up to the same rule I used on number 1. I'm going to divide the numbers. 4.85 divided by 2.703 gives you this number in your calculator, 1.79430, and I'm just going to go ahead and stop there because I need to look at how many significant figures. It's the least number of significant figures. This number right here has 3 significant figures. This number right here, if you count them, has 4. So this one is my least, so I'm going to record this answer over here to 3 significant figures. So the 1 is 1 significant figure, the 7 is another significant figure, and my third one, the 9, I need to decide on my last one. I need to look at that 4, and since it's a 4, I don't round up. So my answer for that is 1.79. Alright, the last problem on this paper wants you to subtract. So go ahead and do the calculation. So 10.004 minus 3.65 gives you 6.354 in your calculator. But we need to look at, in this case, we're subtracting again, so we need to look at decimal places. This one has 3 decimal places. That one has 2. So I need to round my answer to the least, which would be 2. So I'm going to say 6 point, and then there's 1 decimal place, and then my second one, I use that next digit to see if I'm going to round, and I'm not. I'm going to keep it 6.35. Okay, moving on to some more difficult ones that have multi-step problems in it. What you have to do here is go with whatever you would do in a math class. Like on this first problem, I want you to take 7.405 times 3.25 and then divide it by 4.6. Order of operation that you learned in math class, you're going to have to multiply those numbers first before you divide them. So I'm going to take 7.405 times 3.25, and it gives me 24.06625. But before I go on and divide this, because I am in the end going to have to record my answer to the least number of significant figures because I'm multiplying and dividing, I have to record this to the correct number of significant figures before I move on to my division. So the two numbers that I multiplied, which are here and here, this one has the least number of significant figures, and there's 3 of them. So I need to round this to 3 significant figures. So I'm going to round it to 24 point, and that 6 is going to cause me to round that up to a 1. Now I'm going to divide this by 4.6 and record my answer to the correct significant figure again. So 24.1 divided by 4.6 is 5.2391, and I'm just going to stop there because now we need to look back. We are dividing, so you have 3 significant figures there and you have 2 there. So I need to round this answer to 2 significant figures, which would be 5.2. The next one, order of operation, tells you that you would have to add those numbers first before you divided. So if I add 209.2 plus 158.83, my calculator gives me 368.03. But again, I can't record that measurement more precise than what went into it. So when I add and subtract, I have to look at decimal places. The first number had 1 decimal place, the second one had 2. My answer right now has 2, so I am going to have to round this to 1 decimal place. So that 3 would have to be dropped, and I don't round the 0 up because of that, so it's 368.0. Now I can take that number and divide it by 3.50. So 368.0 divided by 3.50 gives me 105.14285, and I'm going to go ahead and stop there. So now I'm dividing over here, so I need to look at how many significant figures. This number right here has 4 significant figures. This one has 3. And if you can't figure out how I'm getting these significant figures, you need to go back to the video on how to calculate or how to look at how many significant figures are in a measurement and review that a little bit. So I need the least number, so I need 3. So right now I have, if I start with the 1, there's 1 significant figure, 2 significant figures, so the 5 is going to be my last one, and that 1 tells me that I don't round up. So the answer is 105. Alright, next one. We are going to have to do that calculation first before we multiply. So 452.31 minus 146.274 gives me 306.036. But again, before I go on to my next operation where they want me to multiply, I've got to make sure that I record this to the correct number of significant figures. So when I'm subtracting, again, the rule is decimal places. This one has 2 decimal places, this one has 3, so I'm going to go with that one. I need to make this number have 2 decimal places by saying 306.036. and I'm going to round that because the next one's a 6 to 4, so I'm not going to use that anymore. Now I'm going to multiply this number by 45.4. So 306.04 times 45.4 gives me 13, let me erase that, gives me 13,894.216. Now I need to look though, because I'm multiplying. This one has 5 significant figures, this one has 3. So I somehow need to make that answer have 3 significant figures. The only way to do this one is to put this in scientific notation. So again, if you can't remember how to do this, you need to go back to the video on how to do scientific notation, but I could move this 1, 2, 3, 4 places to the left, and I need 3 significant figures, so I would say 1.3, and that 8 would become a 9 to round it up, times 10, and I moved it 4 places to the left. So the 10 to the 4th, that right there, is not included in significant figures. There's my 3 significant figures right there. Alright, last one. I have to multiply first, so 24.3 times 2.7 gives me 65.61. But again, before I move on, record it to the correct. This one has 3 significant figures, this one has 2. I'm multiplying, so I'm looking at significant figures. So I need 2 significant figures there. So I'm going to have to round this number up to 66. So I won't use that anymore. And then I'm going to divide that by 4.75. So 66 divided by 4.75 is 13.8947 in your calculator. But again, looking at those numbers, this has 2 significant figures, this one has 3. I need that to have 2 significant figures. So that would be the 1 and the 3 right there. But again, this 8 right there is going to round that 3 up to a 4. So my answer will end up being 14 on that one. So there's how to do significant figure calculations. Go ahead and answer your WISC form for this video. Thank you.